So dhammang deseti adi kalyanang, madhye kalyanang, pariyo sanat kalyanang, satang sabyanjanang, kevala palipunnang, parisudhang, brahmacharyang pakaseti. He reveals a teaching which is, along with its letter and along with its spirit, is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in its conclusion. He makes known, that is through his example, he makes known a divine conduct, a divine way of life, a morally good way of life, pure and perfectly complete. Our subject that's being referred to is still the Tathagata. So he, deseti, this is a causative, he teaches, preaches, makes known, reveals. I like reveal because you might see the Buddha, the Tathagata, as a Gnostic revealer. He reveals a teaching, a dhammang. Now, of course, a dharma, or he reveals the dharma, the teaching. And in this case, that's what this means. We've said that dharma has many, many meanings. Context determines, helps us, like everything, establish what the meaning or meanings could be. And I think it's good after here to, dhammang here is the accusative singular. It's the object of deseti. I should say deseti is third person singular. It's causative, but third person singular, present, active. So is, of course, our nominative singular, our masculine nominative singular. So that's the subject. We have this object. Then we have a long list of appositives. And I like to just skip over here to sa, tang, and sabyanjanang. This sa we met with before, with sa devakang, sa marakang, etc. This is with. So in order, in the Pali order, sa tang means sa attang, with the meaning, and sabyanjanang, with the letter. Atta can have quite a few meanings as well, advantage or morally good, but here it's the meaning, and this comes up quite a bit. I think the Pali English Dictionary gives ti, atto. We've talked about ti, how the particle ti can mark direct speech, but also a concept. So atto can mark the meaning, this is the meaning. Byanjana is a mark or a letter. So these two taken together, the spirit and the letter. And so I've used a relative clause here in English because of these appositions. Just keep in mind there is no relative clause in the Pali. It doesn't need it. But I think in English, you could say he reveals a teaching with its letter, with its meaning, beautiful in the beginning. That works. But just to make it a little more clear and English sounding, a little more idiomatic, I think we can make use of a relative clause here. What I really like about this, and what really jumped out at me when I read this, and I read this in translation, I read it in Walsh, his translation of the Digha Nikaya. I like how, as opposed to certain spiritual teachers who talk about like the dark night of the soul, and I'm not saying that can't happen, and maybe this is, maybe the Buddha considered this better PR, but he mentions about this teaching that it's kalyanang, that it's beautiful, delightful, it's morally good. And again, what I like about this is it's delightful, beautiful in the beginning, middle, and end. And I think the point here is if you follow the teaching, you don't encounter the dark night of the soul. I think we encounter the dark night of the soul. We encounter turbulence when we make turbulence. If we just follow the teaching, and that is sort of lessen anger, greed, tanha, desire, then things start to just, turbulence dies down. And this is such a beautiful thing that the teaching is proclaimed to be beautiful. And this is something to consider if we are having problems with the teaching. Let's reflect that from the, The Buddha is telling us that it is kalyanang, or kalyana, dhammo kalyano. It should be beautiful. And I think it means that we should find ever increasing levels of peace and satisfaction, if you will, less anger. And we are training ourselves. This isn't part of the text here, but we're training ourselves to overcome unwholesome states. And as those fall away, it seems very intuitively correct or obvious that more wholesome states will arise, and that will bring us more and more satisfaction and more real joy. Then this last little bit is about, it's still, the subject is still so, pointing back to Tathagata, the Tathagata pakaseti, which comes from pakasati, to shine forth, become known. So this is a causative verb with that a phoneme, pakaseti, to illustrate, explain, make known. He sort of shows forth, brahmacharyang. I first thought that this was a Kamadarya compound, but really looking at it, it could be tapurisa. Charyang is conduct, way of life, and Brahma, maybe of Brahma would be the way to say this, so that it's not really an adjective, it's of Brahma. This is masking the genitive case, so that, and that would make it the tapurisa, a way of life of Brahma, or a divine way of life, a godlike way of life, meaning chaste, morally good. There are these two other adjectives describing that. Pali sudhang, pure, perfect, clean, pure. We might go with clean or pure. And then kevala paripunnang would be completely perfect. So a completely perfect, pure, morally good life is what the Buddha's leading. I'll also point out, kevala comes up in Jainism with kevala jnana, which is omniscience. That's the state that the fully liberated attain. So that will conclude this description of the Buddha. It is certainly worthy of contemplation. Peace all.